Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. In this episode, we are going to be writing a Rust project from scratch. We are going to be recreating the old software called ED, which is the original text editor of Unix, written by Ken Thompson, and we are going to be writing it in Rust for fun. And in the last episode, we essentially made a TCP server with Rust, and we made it into HTTP. We also wrote some unsafe Rust code trying to link it with C. So I would recommend checking it out, but that's not related to this episode. We're going to be doing a completely only Rust project from scratch. And a little bit of history on ED. ED is actually the forefather of Vim, might I add, because there was a text editor called EX, which is the successor of ED, and VI, the predecessor of Vim, is essentially a visual mode for EX. That's why it has a name called VI, because it stands for visual. So it's actually the kind of like the great grandfather of Vim in a way. So that's kind of funny. So we're gonna be taking a look at how to use ED first, so that we could get an idea of how to implement it from scratch. So the ED I have is the GNU re-implementation. It's not the original ED because you can't get the original in today's day and age because it's eroded to time. Maybe I don't know. So we are going to create a C file, for example, and I'm gonna open it with ed. Right away you see it says 0 because it read 0 bytes from main.c because the file is essentially empty. In order to add a text, you use the a command, which is, believe it or not, the same command in Vim in order to add a text to a line, essentially append a text to the line. So I use the a command, and then you just type your program. um, might also note that there is no, like, ncurses window, or there's a GUI window. It's essentially just a teletype, because I mean, not a teletype, it's a line oriented text editor that they use in a teletype, because back in the day people were working from dumb terminals. They essentially only had, like, a small window that they can work on. They can't, like, open like an ncurses application or a GUI application. So this is what they got to work. So it's kind of nice to experience what was the past, living in the present. um, I'm just gonna write a hello world program, and after you're done typing, you have to press a period. That means you are now in essentially command mode, kind of. So now you are essentially back into the same mode where you were before in that. So now you can use the W command in order to write, which is, might you believe, the same command that is in Vim. So I press W. Now it says 76. That means it wrote 76 bytes into the buffer. And you can press Q command, which is also the same in Vim, to quit out of the program. As you can see, this is essentially Vim, but without, the fancy UI. You just have to have the code in your head, and you need to type the Vim commands. Essentially, it's not exactly Vim, but you can see how it got inspired from Vim. So we're gonna also do some other examples. So you could use the comma L. So essentially, you have a range. You could do like 1 comma 3 L, which displays the first three lines. You could also do a range like comma just the command, which means it essentially displays all the command. Now this is a pretty unsafe thing to do, because imagine you're doing this in a big project. And what else? You can do substitute command. You can substitute world um, into sailor, for example, and it says question mark. Uh, did I type spell world incorrectly? I'm gonna just I think you need to do printf. Wait, so do I need to do 4s? I'm just experimenting this. Yeah, I think that's how you do that. Okay, I kind of forgot. I rarely use ed. I only use ed to essentially copy and paste something into a file and store it, because in Vim you need to go into an weird insert paste mode. If you know Vim, you might understand what I'm saying. But other than that, this is how we substitute. and we can write that, and now we can display. I have made it into Salem. Let's try adding another line below print. So I go to the line with print, and then I use the A command, and I'm going to say printf uh, another line essentially. I'm going to use the period. I'm going to write, and I'm going to quit. So let's cat out the main program, and there you go. We have another line. So this is how people used to edit it back in the days, using just line-oriented editor. They didn't even have the entire the luxury of viewing the entire file. And imagine Ken Thompson, he developed great things in Unix using this, and it's kind of unbelievable for me. So yep, so let's just get started with our project. We're gonna recreate this program essentially. In today's episode, I'm not gonna do everything. I'm just gonna have the A command and the W command. That's what I'm planned today. So let's create. I'm gonna call it TE, stands for text editor. I know, very really hard name to come up. I'm gonna create a make file. And in the last episode, I also had like an issues with the compilation errors in Vim. The reason being I used make and it used an incorrect format. So I'm gonna also create a init.vim. So let's just open Vim, and I'm gonna go to init.vim. Essentially, I'm gonna change the compiler to Rust C, but I'm gonna set the make program to use make. So because in the last episode, I just set the compiler to make, and it used an incorrect error format. So that's why I was getting a really bad error messages, and I was really pissed off. So I'm gonna go to te.rs. Um, why is it taking so long? I don't know. Like the Rust file type is in Vim is really slow. I think I really feel that. Like you see, I opened the Vim script file really fast, but the Rust file took a while to run. That's strange. So I'm gonna say hello world. Let's create a hello world, and in the make file, I'm just gonna say te.rs, and it's gonna have Rust C te.rs. There you go. So I'm gonna make the program and te hello world. Now let's just get started. First of all, we need to know how to get input from the standard input, which I have no clue of really. So I'm gonna just Google it, how to get input from standard input Rust, and I'm gonna use the Google AI. I think LLMs are better than search engines in 2025. So let's just see. So you have this std.io. Can I search that here? IO. Okay, we have a module. So okay, we might also need to come back here. We might need to write to a file. So that's also really helpful. So essentially, like maybe importing it like this gives us access to every things inside the package. I'm not sure. So you know what, I'm gonna use this. Go back to the Rust file. I'm gonna paste this. I think what we need is stdin, if I'm not correct. I mean, if I'm correct. So that's what we need, and we have a readline function there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a let um, view. I'm going to have cmd. That's what we're going to call it as string.new, and I'm going to do stdin read line, and we pass in a mutable reference to the cmd. And I'm going to also try to print that thing here. So just so that we can see whether I didn't mess anything up. I'm gonna also do edit.vim and make that. So it says read line is not found. Really? Are you sure? Read underscore line. I don't see any problem. Maybe we need to do this thing here. Maybe it returns and you know it also need to import result from here. Maybe it returns and the IO error that we saw in the last episode. So and we need to do an okay here. So it's essentially it's like exception in Java. So we are essentially saying this function might throw an error. So here we are just saying there is no error. So that's what we're doing. Maybe that's why read line is found. Um, maybe I need to do. Is that how I do that? Of course. Hmm. That's really strange. In this, okay, it's IO. Yeah, that should work, right? Uh, um, see, okay, we need to call this function. Okay, that's what the mistake. That's what the mistake I made. Um, Feeling really dumb. So let's say hello. There you go. We get hello back, and essentially we need to go in a loop and get the command. And as far as I know, this hello actually contains a new line at the end, right? So let's try to do that. Hello. Yeah, there's a new line. We need to trim that, and I'm gonna check the docs how to trim that. Trim maybe left, maybe right. Is there a trim right? Yeah, we have a trim right. But it's an implementation for str and we have a string. Hmm. Maybe we need to do something like this. We need to do cmd equal to cmd dot to string or as str, and we need to call this method because essentially this is a string that is allocated in the heap, I assume, and that is string literal. The str in Rust stands for string literal, and in and string is essentially a memory location where a string is stored. So where was it? Trim right. Okay, copy that. No, I need to. Okay, and to string. I'm not sure whether it's a memory safe way to do this, but this is Rust, so it's gonna work. I hope. Um, use trim end. Sure. Okay. Hello, and there you go. So we got a perfect string so that we can pass that. So what I planned was I'm gonna have a struct essentially. Okay, so I'm gonna call it state. So I'm gonna put everything that is related to the text editor inside the struct, and I'm gonna pass this struct to a function essentially. So it's like a movable thing that we can have. So I'm gonna so essentially, if I were to implement this in C, I would essentially have chunks of memory where I would load the text, preferably each line in a linked list probably. But I think we are gonna use vec here. You guys don't know vec is stands for vector, uh, which is essentially dynamic array. So do we have vec here? There you go. This is what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna use a vec of strings essentially. So this is not a really a good design, but this is good enough. We are living in 2025, so we are not having memory constraints here. So I'm gonna put lines, and it's gonna be a vec of string essentially. I assume this is how you create struct. I really don't know. So learn X in Y Rust. I can't even spell Rust. Okay. Struct. Okay, that's how you create struct. And I'm gonna have line, which is an usize maybe. So usize is essentially size t of C. So it's an unsigned long. So and what else we need? We might need to have some flags. um, or we could have like a boolean in order to indicate that. So I'm gonna have a flag. I'm gonna have it as U8 because we might not need more than U8. I think that's it. So that looks good to me. So what I planned was we could have a box essentially. So box is a way. Box is something that you use to allocate something in the heap. We saw this in the last episode. So I'm gonna have a box. I mean mute, and I'm gonna call it state, and it's gonna be a box uh, of state. I think that's how you do that. Not really sure. And lines is gonna be uh, dot new. Line is gonna be 0. I think that's how you do that. Let's check the compilation errors if it fails. And flags are gonna be 0. Um, yeah, so it's essentially I did the wrong thing, so I'm gonna quickly change this. You know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna doing some little bit of Vim magics. So this is going to be mutable, but right now it's not, and yeah, it's unused. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, for example, create a parse command, and I'm gonna pass a state here. So it's gonna be um, state. Do we need let here? I think we don't need let here. So it's gonna be a box of state, and I'm also gonna pass the command. So it's gonna be cmd. It's gonna be string. So the reason why I'm doing is it because we could check the usage of borrow checker by passing this box around. We could learn how that works. So what I need to do is I need to initially get a command, and I need to run a while loop. While command is not equal to quit command, essentially q command quits out of the ed we saw in the demo. So while that's not the case, we are gonna pass command, and we're gonna move the state and the command to the pass command, and we might need to essentially get the next command. So what we are doing here is we are getting the input from standard input, and we are essentially running a while loop till it's a quit command. We are passing the command where we are going to do things, and I'm getting the next input. So in the next loop, it's going to update. So that's what I'm doing here. So back in the pass command, what I'm going to do, essentially we need to do a match of CMD. That's what we need to do. But we are gonna first of all do the append operation. So let's think about it. So when the string is A, that means the user is trying to enter an append mode. We need to essentially put a flag here, uh, basically. I'm gonna create some flag, const write mode, basically. Um, so it's gonna be a flag like that. Um, is that a flag? Yeah, that should do that. So here we need to set the flag, and in order to set the flag, I need to do state dot flag, and I think I need to do it with an or. Yeah, I think that's how we do that. So I'm essentially wait, let me think about it. So you have 0000, and that's essentially I'm pushing it by 1. We will see. Okay, so here we need to check if the flag is set. So we do if state dot flag has a write mode. So we are checking if the write mode is set, and here we might need to do a return, so that if it is in write mode, we just handle things here. If it is not, we go to this match case. So if it is in the write mode, what we need to do is we need to set the current command as string in the spec. So that's what we need to do. So I need to take a look at spec. Is there something called insert? Okay, we have insert. Yeah, that looks perfect. So what we are going to do is state dot lines dot insert, and we are going to insert that. So the command for insert is index and the element. So we are gonna insert at state dot lines. Remember, by default it has 0, so we're gonna increment it in the next line, and we wanna put command, and I wanna increment the line. So state dot line less equal to 1. So that looks good, and we also need to check for dot essentially. So we need to also do a check here. If command equal to dot, that means we are essentially getting out of read mode, and here we need to set the flag to, I think, how do you do a dot? I really forgot. Mm, Let me think about it. So mm, what I'm gonna Google, bitmap flags, see examples. Yeah, I always have a flag. I always have some example to refer. Since we are doing a new project, I kind of forgot. Yeah, we got that one right. Yeah, I got that one right. And yeah, so essentially we need to do a not here, and we need to do an and. Okay, that looks good. So we need to do an and we need to do a not here. I assume that's how you do bitwise not in Rust. We are gonna take a look at the compilation errors. And yep, and I also mess this one up. Kind of was thinking that didn't make any sense. So yep, so that looks good. Okay, so it's saying that use an exclamation mark for not. That's good. It's really nice. Rust kind of understands things. Rust compiler understands things. So do I need to do an U8 here? Is that what it's asking? Like that. Okay. Mismatch types. What do you mean mismatch types? So do I say just one? Okay. Mismatch types. It expect. Okay, it should be line. There you go. And hmm, maybe I need to do as str. Maybe that's what's the error. Non-exhaustive pattern. I think I need to pass in a reference. Fix that. No. Okay, it's saying me to add an underscore pattern. So that's what it is saying. So in EX, we saw it just prints a question mark. So that's what we're gonna do. What am I doing? Print ln and then an exclamation mark, and we're just gonna print a question mark like that because that's what EX does. So there you go. Cannot assign flag because state is declared immutable. So let's just make it mutable. And we might also need to change things here. Here, this is what I really don't like about Rust. Like it complains that you know you need to make things mutable everywhere. Now I kind of understand that from a perspective of a person reading this code because they might find that information really useful. But as a programmer, I kind of feel this is really hectic to putting mute everywhere, and it also complains when for example, I just made mute state before. I just made state mute before, but it complained that you're not modifying. Why did you make it as mute? So that's kind of annoying, in my opinion. I think we need to pass in a reference for the state here. We need to accept reference, and it should be mute here, I assume. Um, no, actually, we are trying to move, right? So I think we don't need mute there. What am I doing? So what else? Does not need to be mutable. uh, state. We are trying to move here. Hmm. How do you move? I kind of forgot. Move. Yeah, that's how you move. So what is the problem here? Hmm. It's a mutable state. State inside a box. We are accepting box here, and it's not even a reference. It's just doing that would essentially. Hmm. I'm really confused. Uh, let's see what we can do. Let's try to read the compilation error. I don't want to add traits because I don't want to copy. It's thinking, it's kind of thinking like I'm trying to make a copy of it, but that's not what I'm trying. I'm trying to move the thing. But the problem is I really don't know Rust. Okay, it wants me mutable, but then how do I move this thing? Hmm. Um, you know what? I'm just gonna ask the LLM how to move this thing so that we can, you know, quickly learn things. I'm gonna go to ChatGPT, how to move state from main function to parse CMD in Rust. There you go. I'm just gonna quickly ask. So, what did I do wrong? Mm, okay, so it is trying to keep it in the heap, but I want to keep the struct as a box and move the box to RC. That's what I want. So I don't want to keep it in the stack. So how do I do that? So I have a box.new, pass CMD. So what do we do here? It looks essentially the same, and we are dereferencing it here. Hmm. Okay. So I'm gonna read what it says. Rust as ownership can make it tricky. Function flow solution to solve a mutable reference state instead of moving the ownership. This is a way state modify. Instead of passing it as a box, you can pass it as a mutable state. Hmm. Maybe I'm gonna opt for the first solution because I don't want to do this dereference shenanigans there. I'm gonna maybe, little bit. Maybe we can have this in the stack itself. Um, because it doesn't matter because essentially let's think about the bytes here. Okay, so this is going to have just an address, so it's going to take 8 bytes. It's and this is a usize, so it's going to just have a long, and this is an u8, so it essentially doesn't consume that much of a stack. So we could have this in the stack, and let's make this as mutable. Let's go here. We don't need box anymore, so let's get rid of the box. And it essentially accepts a reference. Yeah, so it accepts a mutable reference, so we don't need to put mute here. That's what I did wrong. And we need to pass, I assume we need to pass a reference like this, maybe. uh, yeah, we need to do a mutable thing. Okay. um, okay, so it's telling me it borrowed the command. um, it borrowed the command, so maybe we could like make this into a string reference. And here I'm gonna, because we are not modifying the thing, so we could do something like this. And here I need to, don't forget to dereference it. Mm, behind share reference, or maybe I need to pass a string that is not, so let's not do that. Or what I could do is I could bring back the string back, so I could do this, or this command. I could essentially put this everywhere, so here and here, that I could essentially do that, and I could return string out of here. This is something we did in the last episode. So essentially we are moving the memory ownership and we are giving it back, but at this case we don't need to own the memory. So let's take a look at the chat gpt example. What did it do for that? How did it handle string? So it essentially passed it like that, and it never returned. We just used it just like what we did, but we are getting error. I don't understand. I don't want to pass that really, but it's giving me error that not this. It's giving me error that it wants to copy. You know what? I'm gonna also ask this in ChatGPT. Maybe we are wipe coding here today. We are wipe coding Rust in this session. Uh, how can I not pass ownership of CMD to parse CMD? And as I am not modifying it. There you go. So let's try to understand what it's saying. Okay, so it's essentially trying to, okay, I understood what the approach ChatGPT is telling without even seeing it. Um, Rather than passing a string, which is a memory ownership, I could have thought of this myself. Um, Seriously. So we're gonna do as str here. So we are passing that, and I think we need to do that. But then this is gonna fail. We need to do toString, so that would create ownership. And here we don't need that anymore because it is already string. There you go. Thank you, ChatGPT. That was really helpful. So we got a, I think we essentially had an append command. So what I'm going to do in order to inspect, I'm just going to have comma L right now, and comma L is essentially going to dump a friendly dump of the state lines. So we would maybe implement that later, but for now we need a quick thing to look at. Okay, so I did it in the wrong order. There you go. So I'm gonna go to TE. We're gonna do A. We're gonna do hello. I'm gonna do world, and I'm gonna do a dot. That means we are out of the insert mode essentially. And I'm going to do comma L. That didn't do anything. That was disappointing, and it didn't quit. So we clearly made something wrong. So why didn't the quit command work? You know what? In order to debug this, I'm going to do println. What am I doing? I'm going to do a println at the command here, like how we did before. I'm going to do te hello, and it has a question mark. Okay. So if I do q, okay, I understood what error we did. So essentially, it's getting accumulated in the command. So every time before we do this, we need to set command to an empty string, I assume. Um, is that safe to do? I mean, I know it works, but uh, is that a safe thing to do? I'm not really sure. You know what? We're gonna just play with that and see what happens. So okay, let's just test the program. That's what we need to do. I'm gonna say append hello world, and I'm gonna enter to normal mode, and I'm gonna try to list, and there you go. So it also added dot into the thing. That's not right. So we need to add a return here, essentially. So there you go. That's why I added the debug in order to catch mistakes like this. So I'm going to do hello, I'm going to do world, do dot, and I'm going to do a list. There you go. We got an hello world. Now all that we have to do right now is essentially add a write command. Okay. So uh, that's the only pending thing that we got to do, and we could wrap up this episode. So how do you write to file? You might need to ask the LLM. So how to write to file Rust example? Because as I said in multiple episodes, I truly believe asking LLM and looking at an example code is a better way to learn rather than going through the docs. Okay, so let's see. So this returns an IO error. So it could either create a file or it could error. And okay, so we can do that. So yep, that looks like what we want. So I'm gonna do let file equal to, so where do we get that from? FS. Gonna mark that, go back, file, create. I'm gonna just put it in foo.txt for now. Maybe next episode we're gonna try to get the arguments from the uh, you know arguments, the command line arguments, and try to put that in the file name. Let's do that next episode. We could essentially pass that through state and do it like that, and but this could fail, so we need to try to match this essentially. So let's try to match that. It could be either okay, and it could contain a file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you know what, let's just keep it as F, and I'm going to say uh, println we got a file, and I'm going to mark it as F so that Rust doesn't shout at me that I'm not using it. In case of an error, I don't know how EX handles error. You know what, I'm just going to just print a question mark, because I really don't know how Rust, how EX handles error. So I'm gonna try to make that match let. Okay, so they are essentially doing it. They're doing the match here. This is really a functional thing to do. Essentially, what we are doing here is we are essentially saying, "Oh my God, I never realized this. Oh my God, this is crazy." Because oh, like we are essentially returning the value of this and storing it into a variable. This almost feels like Haskell to me, or Lisp, like the functional paradigm. Oh my God, this is Rust has like a lot of things from functional programming. Like I'm just like realizing these things. So essentially, if we got a file, we are returning it, and in case of an error, we can do this. Okay, this looks good. Okay, I never thought of writing code in this manner before, because before this I was essentially doing like I do things like this. So if I say let some or like okay of something, and I assign that, this is how I did the code, okay of the value. But thinking in a functional way, this is actually a much more cleaner way to do that. You know what, that's really good. I learned something that I never thought you know was doable in Rust. Okay, so I am going to take a look at the docs because I want a very specific way to write to a file. Because we could put everything inside a string buffer and then do write all, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having things in a chunk like this. Because the reason why we have things in a chunk, the main reason is because we can't have a contiguous memory where we can load the entire file. That would be really memory inefficient. Maybe in the modern days that's acceptable, but in a traditional sense that's not acceptable, because imagine you need that much big of a contiguous memory. So if you do like this, for example, here we have only a contiguous memory of the addresses that points to the string wherever it's located. This is not even ideal. If I'm writing this in C, I would have done using linked list. So even like the entire thing would be fragmented. The memory, the layout of the memory would be fragmented. That would be the most ideal thing to do. But this is fine because we are only having contiguous things of the addresses of string, but the string themselves are in an in a separate location, so we could call them like that. So that's good. So I want a specific way to write line by line. If I cannot find that from docs, I'm gonna ask LLM. So let's try to look at that. So write. So we do have write here. So essentially write is a trait and it has a lot of functions. Write all is what we did. Okay, so I can relate to this, because in the last episode we also used write all to write to a socket. So essentially Rust has this trait system where a lot of these common functions are like a trait, and you can use literally the same thing. Okay, this almost feels like Java to me, in a way of like everything has like an interface. In Java, for example, you have linked list, you have array list, and everything follows the interface of list. So any list you have, you can have use the same functions. I feel the same vibe in Rust with these traits. I need to explore this even more deeper, maybe off camera. I will do that later. So maybe write is what I'm looking for. You know what I'm going to do is, once we got the file, I'm going to do for line in lines essentially. um, but okay, that's not going to clash. Okay, I thought about that variable, and we are going to do file dot write, and we are going to, all we need to pass is the bytes. So I'm going to do uh, state dot line, and I'm going to get the line. um, no, we just need line, and we need to, yeah, we need to do it as bytes essentially. And I think that's it. Flushes the file, ensures all the immediate buffer content. Do we need to do this? They are not doing it, but I think we need to do a flush. How do you even close the file? We have like close. Files are automatically closed when they go out of scope. Okay, so they have write. They didn't talk anything about flushing the things, so I assume we don't need to even flush, because they say when it goes out of the scope, the file automatically gets closed. I think we don't need to worry about that. We might need to add a new line there, but we would first take a look at that. Does this compile? Okay, it doesn't compile. Lines is not in the scope, so we need to do state.lines. Um, write is not in the struct. We need to include that import that we saw. Uh, where was it? We need to do. We need to include this thing here. That would fix that. And mutable reference. I think we need to pass it as a reference like this. That would fix that. Cannot borrow file as mutable. Cannot borrow file as mutable. It's not declared as mutable. So let's just make it as mutable. Unset result may be unused, so it doesn't return anything. Let me take a look at it. Where was I? Right. Okay, so yeah, it returns a result. So we need to check for errors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially match this do I need to match? I just need error, so I'm gonna do let err of e. If there is an error, uh, we might need to essentially do this. I think this works. Okay, that compiled. So essentially this is what I was used to writing, and looking at this syntax, this is like a very functional thing, and I got really shocked. This is really nice. You know what, I really like Rust for having these functional things inbuilt. I think the other language that I can think on top of my head that supports this multi-paradigm thing is JavaScript. But JavaScript is a extremely sloppy language, but Rust is not as sloppy as JavaScript. That's good. So I'm gonna recompile. I'm gonna write E, say hello world, and we're gonna exit out of the insert mode, and we're gonna use the write command. So I assume that wrote to the file. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna cat foo.txt, and there you go. We actually wrote to the file. Now all that we have to do here is we need to add a new line. So what we need to do is we need to use the format macro. This is also something that we saw in the last episode. So uh, we need to do something like that. I want to check the definition of format macro. So format macro, what does that return? I think it returns string. So does string have as bytes? That's a good next question. Can I convert it to bytes directly? Okay, we can. So I think this code works. I could have compiled and tried, so I don't need to do this doc hunting, going to the docs. So I put hello, I put world, I come to normal mode, I write, and I quit, and I kept the foo.txt, and it didn't work because I am an idiot and I forgot to add the new line, obviously. And we're gonna do that. Hello world, come to normal mode, write, quit, foo.txt. There you go. We actually implemented the append feature, but that's the only thing we have done. So in the next episode, we are gonna be continuing implementing. We might add the feature of loading the file and editing it, and we might also implement the range thing later on in the upcoming episode. So that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and I would see you in the next one. Adios.